So, I know this has been a disappointing evening for you, but Pats Nation, your fans, they've stuck with you through thick and thin. Social media, they still love you. Do you have a message for the fans who are so supportive of you and the team?
We love our fans. We love our fans. That was like the most desperate interview question I've ever. I felt embarrassed for that woman.
She was so into it though. If you haven't watched this, we're talking about the Pats press conference where a lady who I'm sure is a very nice individual asked every single Patriots player and coach if they had a message for Pats Nation. But when Belichick was up there, she had to ask him, they've stuck with you through thick and thin. It was,
where's the thin? I don't get the thin.
Well, that's exactly what Belichick said.
Thin is like only the texture, the thickness of the garment that was worn in Florida about this time last year. That's it. Everything other than that has been thick in that franchise and their fan base. Can you imagine thinking that fan base needs anything at this point?
Well, also they're so good to their fan base in general. Like Brady is not like closed off. He's
right.
incredibly outgoing as far as like giving the fans content and stuff like that. And so is Belichick, despite trying not to. So I don't know. That was the funniest thing that came out of that. The whole Brady conversation that followed it was not nearly as interesting.
Right.
But that press conference was great. I think Brady is staying with the Patriots 100%.
Oh, see, my thing was I never had given it that much thought until last night. And then for some reason, somebody must have bugged Romo with it because it was the whole time. And that was
because it could have been his last game in Foxborough. So they were ready for it.
I see what you're saying. Okay. But
even if they had won,
but that was just, it was so thick last night. And it got me thinking about
it. Wasn't thin.
Yeah. And so
you think he's going somewhere else?
I don't know. I mean, but if you're the Patriots or you're Brady, right? McDaniel might be gone. That offense it's not a quick fix, right? They need a tight end. They need a field stretching wide receiver. Edelman,
they'll take any wide receiver.
Yeah, Edelman is not a spring chicken anymore. They gave up a second-round pick for Sanu already, right? Their second-round pick next year are already busted.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? And then they're not good at identifying wide receiver talent anyway, right? Like this is a great draft for wide receivers, and Belichick has shown he's great at everything except for drafting wide receivers, it appears. So if I'm Brady, like the only thing that appeals to me about the Patriots is the challenge of having to resurrect the franchise again. And at that age, I just don't know if that's appealing to him.
Well, so the option would then be to go somewhere with McDaniels, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But none of the places with a quarterback vacancy right now are appealing at all. None of them are. So the question is, could he go into a place, and I'm thinking of Dallas, like if he says, hey, I want to go to Dallas, did they just kick Dak Prescott to the side and he and Josh McDaniel walk in there? And because I don't see that happening.
I think Dak is too good for that. I mean,
it's not about Dak. It's about Jerry Jones.
Yeah, yes, and you'd have to be convinced if you're Jerry Jones, having not won a Super Bowl since January of 1996, that Brady's going to get me one Super Bowl before I die, and all this kind of stuff, and like new coach, new quarterback, that's not a recipe for a Super Bowl. So I don't really. I mean, I think Barry Switzer's Barry Switzer had to take this till his second year to get a Super Bowl.
You're telling me that if Tom Brady calls up Jerry Jones and says, "Hey, Jerry, listen here, buddy. I'm bringing my guru, Josh. We're bringing the Patriot way to Dallas. We're going to get you a Super Bowl."
But what would that require on Jerry Jones's part? That would require some acquiescence to the Patriot way, which has always, always, always been his issue.
But it sounds good to him. I'm saying that all he has to do is buy in before the season starts. I'm not saying it's going to go well. I'm just saying that would be something.
But that's the reason that Jason Garrett hung around for so long was because he adhered to the and he had
the tapes.
He had the tapes, and he apparently gave the tapes over this afternoon when he agreed to be fired.
Do you think they're in a safe?
They're somewhere.
It's just like, here's the code.
Well, because so we were saying this during the game when we were working the game today. It's like I actually don't. I actually can understand it from Garrett's perspective. If you have a contract for a few more years, then be like, oh, go ahead, fire me. I'm still going to get paid no matter what. But if your contract's expiring, you don't have
fight for the job.
You don't have a contract for, and it's not as though Garrett, like, he hasn't been calling plays for a while, and when he did, he wasn't that good. So, like, what position is he really gonna? Maybe quarterback coach, but even then, like, I think people have soured on him quite a bit. So, is he gonna get that another job? I don't think so.
Well, not as a head coach.
Well, but even not as like a good like. And do you think after being a head coach for 11 odd or 10 odd years or whatever, you're gonna want to step down to like a QB coach?
No, the money isn't nearly as good.
I
will say this, because he is a former Cowboys head coach, he can walk onto any set.
Oh, sure. Well, and he's good looking, and he's got like, yeah,
he's a smart dude, and by all accounts, everyone really likes him. I've heard nothing but really good things about Jason Garrett. Now, so you're telling me that Jerry Jones says no to Tom Brady there?
I'm saying,
because I don't think there's any way. There's no way that Jerry Jones is saying, no, Tom, I don't want you and Josh to come over here and throw the ball, re-sign Amari Cooper. You have this great offensive line. You have Blake Jarwin. We won't put Jason Witten on the field once. I promise. You can play in Dallas. You don't have to deal with the cold.
My only concern would be that if I'm Jerry, like, again, like, the people that have been around Jerry have been people who are sort of desperate to be there.
I get it.
And they work around him, whereas Brady and McDaniel or whomever would be calling the shots here, right? And that to me is just like, I just don't see it happening.
Okay, so he's not going to Dallas. I can't find another place that Tom Brady is going other than New England. And I'll throw out a couple of free agent names. So Amari Cooper's a free agent. Now I think the Cowboys have to re-sign him, but Cowboy fans are not super sold on Amari Cooper.
Yeah, because he's a drop. I mean, he's a guy that fans wouldn't like, which is a drops guy.
It's a drops guy, yes, but he also hasn't shown up, in big games aside from that. Just not even just not dropping the ball, but not being productive. And Michael Gallup played really well this year.
Right.
So that's not a guarantee. So maybe the Patriots can make a play at him. But you know who else I'm thinking about? A.J. Green is a free agent.
Right, and he's like a perfect Patriot.
The Patriots are an attractive destination. They could replenish the tight end spot easily because there's tight ends everywhere. They even have one in N'Keal Harry.
They could get Eric Ebron in free agency or something like that.
And then you get A.J. Green, and the pass protection you can solidify because it's easy and cheap to do so.
What about the Los Angeles Chargers?
They're a joke of an organization compared to the Patriots and the Cowboys, and I don't think Brady wants to deal with that.
Okay, but that again is something where, like, if you're a short-term destination, it's sort of like, does it really matter to them? You're in Southern California. Granted, you're not in. They are moving into the big stadium next year. If you're the Chargers, it makes a lot of sense for you because you don't want to be playing second fiddle to the Rams in that city for all that long.
Here's the issue.
Makes a little bit of sense.
They have a terrible offensive line.
They do.
I don't think Anthony Lynn and that offense is exactly what Brady wants. So he'd have to come in and say.
I'm still wondering how. Anthony Lynn seems like a great guy, but I'm wondering why he still has a job, frankly.
Right. But Brady would have to come in and basically tear down the organization and build it back up. And the other issue is they have, by all accounts, skimped on like health resource was one of the reasons people believe they keep getting all these injuries. I don't think Brady wants to deal with
What about the Carolina Panthers? Carolina Panthers appear to be a franchise that is, relatively figuring it out. They have some pretty solid weapons in Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore, Greg Olsen if he hangs around for another year,
and owner that's well respected,
Christian McCaffrey, an offensive line that's not a complete disaster, and a defense that played a little bit better than we thought this year, although they faded on the stretch.
Here's the problem: it's in Carolina,
Charlotte, North Carolina. Yeah.
It's in a place that he doesn't want to be, and you just mentioned all those things. They're still not as good a team as the Patriots are, so there's no way. Oh, get
not on defense for sure, but on offense, the skill position players for the Panthers are better than the
currently.
Yeah,
but the Patriots, I think.
How many players are the Patriots away from being good on offense?
One.
Okay, I would argue it's at least two.
You put A.J. Green on there with Julian Edelman.
I still think you need a tight end.
Okay, go draft one.
Okay, I'm just saying, like the Panthers would be, I think, a pretty like attractive spot. especially because they need a head coach too. It's a head coach. It's McDaniel.
I'm telling you, I like Charlotte. I don't think it's that attractive to Tom Brady.
Okay.
There's
that is something. Okay.
There's no way TB12 is going to Charlotte.
Okay. Here's the last one. I just got to throw it out there because, I mean, why does AJ Green even have to move? The Bengals have the number 1 overall pick.
Did you hear my last argument?
What if they went with Brady, trade the number 1 overall pick, let somebody else take the shot on Joe Burrow? Get welcome to the jungle, Tom.
I think there's a better chance that he would play like for a Mexican national team than move to Cincinnati.
Jeez, he could work here. We could like start his career transition.
Can you imagine how Steve would dance in here like a little girl in a tutu after her first ballet lesson?
Steve would need knee pads after like 2 days.
He'd be giddy. I think if it ends, I'll give you one more. If it's really ugly for Jimmy G,
ooh,
in San Francisco in a playoff game, that's a place where Brady could make a power move, I think, and say, here's where I want to play. And I'd be very curious if it ends really, really poorly for them in a playoff game. Maybe they win one, but it looks bad, and then they lose the next one.
Mm-hmm.
That's his hometown. I'm just saying. Anyways, I think he stays with the Patriots. There's no way Robert Kraft lets him go. He's going to be motivated. They'll replenish. There's no way that he finds a better situation unless a team like Dallas or San Francisco piques his interest. He's so competitive.
He is competitive. It's one of his strengths as a person. We already talked about Jason Garrett. Kind of weird how the guy had to like allow himself to get fired. But yeah,
I feel kind of bad. He gets dragged a lot. I mean, his intentions can't be terrible. I don't think he's an evil dude.
The problem is it's just like Marvin Lewis here. It's just like there takes a certain aptitude to get a team from bad to decent, and then it takes a different aptitude altogether to take them from decent to good. And we saw that with Tampa Bay, with Dungy. He took that team from being terrible to right on the cusp, and then Gruden had to push them over. And then, but Dungy did get a Super Bowl in Indianapolis. But like, that kind of thing where it's just sometimes it takes a new voice. There's nothing wrong with this person, right? It's sort of like, I think we talked about this last time. It's like sort of like that girl you date in college and then you both get jobs in different cities. There's nothing wrong with either person. It just doesn't work, right? It's like for Garrett, that's kind of the thing. I don't think there's anything like fundamentally wrong with the guy. It's a little bit more conservative than I'd like on fourth downs and stuff.
He was less conservative this
right. I mean,
year.
But he wasn't like totally behind. I mean, the fact of the matter is the Cowboys were good enough to be in enough high leverage situations where his conservatism showed more than somebody like Zach Taylor because they're never in games. And so he got the spotlight a lot more, and that's why people disliked him more. But that Cowboys team had the most wins in the NFC East during his tenure. So like he wasn't horrible. He just, I think, not good enough to get the Cowboys over the hump, and that's why they needed to change.
I got to be honest with you. I think he just got really unlucky this year. They were in so many close games. They lost all of them. A couple of bounces go their way. I mean, they squeak into the playoffs and win a game. I don't think he's getting fired. And next year, if they re-sign the guys they need to re-sign, that offense was really, really freaking good. So there's a good chance with the way the NFC East is comprised of garbage upon garbage,
right,
that Jason Garrett and the Cowboys would be great next year. And then we wouldn't be having, like there's so many universes where he stays with the Cowboys and it ends up being great and he's viewed as a
well, we've seen that a couple of times. 2016 was that, and 2014 they went from being bad to good, and then he saved his job for a little bit. Even last year at 10-6, it was sort of the same thing.
We've talked about this before, but right now, who do you think the Cowboys end up signing? It's been McCarthy apparently spent an extra day there. Now, I would venture that's because they have a lot of great steakhouses there, and I would be looking for an excuse personally to stay in Dallas as well. And not to brag, but having met Mike McCarthy, he's a dude that
he's big,
would value a great steak, which I appreciate personally.
So my only issue is that, well, I don't know. I feel like, so growing up in the northern part of the country, he's sort of more a northern part of the country person, but I don't think that means you have to like work there. I mean, you have to like you have a house there type of thing. So I don't think he prefers Cleveland, for example, over Dallas because
think there's any way you could
because of the weather. He, you know, when he talked to Peter King, he said something like, you know, I want a quarterback. I want, you know, basically he just said I want a quarterback. And Dak, to me, I think is somebody who is good enough to succeed if Mike McCarthy is going to evolve his offense to be a successful offense. So that makes some sense. I mean, honestly, if he goes to Cleveland,
Prescott improved a ton as a thrower this year.
Cleveland is so much of a wild card because we're not even sure if Mayfield's good. We think he is, but he didn't play well this year. And you know, so and then New York is another one. And it looks like New York wants Matt Rule a lot, the coach for Baylor. So I think it's McCarthy at this point.
I think so too, and I don't think that'd be a bad move for McCarthy at all. I mean, Dallas is a cool place, so if I were McCarthy, I would be stoked about going to Dallas. I mentioned the steakhouses. Like, legitimately, I would be intrigued if Neil was like, "Hey, Dallas is an option for
moving the company."
I'd be okay with it because of the food that I've had there. It's very good. McCarthy and I are similar in that way, I feel.
Wow.
I haven't asked him.
You just assume they like steak because of his size. So
is that rude?
I think so.
Did you keep moving the? I feel.
I can't get. I'm like Drew Brees. I can't get comfortable in the pocket right now.
All right, should we talk about these games?
Yeah, let's go over it.
So
briefly.
yesterday's games were a lot of fun, and particularly the first game, in large part because Boog was drawing penises and balls on the.
He did it
screen.
Again.
Are you serious? You didn't see this?
No,
dude.
Somebody had to have told that dude.
He was drawing.
Man.
Yeah, I think he did it on purpose this time. So like, hey man,
no way.
Viral moment.
Yeah.
But he was diagramming like a blitz and just circles a guy, draws a line towards the quarterback, circles the guy next to him, and draws a line to the quarterback. It was really.
That's amazing.
It was incredible. Yeah. So that happened, and then Josh Allen lateraled the ball backwards when he didn't need to. He also went 25 for 46. Deshaun Watson either took a sack or completed a pass. DeAndre Hopkins was non-existent for a half and then almost single-handedly won the game by roasting Tre'Davious White a couple of times, which we discussed on this podcast. That was a crazy game, and thankfully Houston ended up covering 2.5 because that was our lock of the week.
Yeah, it was like I actually so this morning I woke up and I was talking to my wife because I didn't get back till late because we stayed here for both games, and I showed my wife the list of things we said to each other during the game just to be like, this is the emotions that we go through.
We called it over 5 times.
And I got to think that there was so many like, oh my God. Come on, Roby was said 3 times because he dropped 3 interceptions in the game. It's just redemption spelled Carlos. You had the great tweet that said "not on the table, Carlos," which is just a great pull. And of course, us proclaiming the game over a number of times. It was a nice sweat to get. We did not get the second pick of the weekend, so we were 1-1. But the first one, which is our lock of the week, was great. Because Houston had the game in the bag at the very end. I think Michael Lopez tweeted out that when Houston got the ball back after that initial 4th down sack, their probability of winning the game was higher than when New England had a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl just 3 years ago. So we had the game in the bag. Sorry. And then they went 4 and out. You know, Buffalo gets the ball back, kicks a field goal, and then Darren Fells drops the pass. You know, the yo-yo back and forth in overtime. We finally get the field goal after that great play by 34. I can't remember who that was. I thought it was Tyler Irvin after Watson got out of that sack. But it was a perfect game for a lot of things we talk about in PFF. Watson earned his pressure rate unbelievably, right? And you know, Buffalo knows that. They went after him, and Watson refuses to give up on a play the same way that Rodgers refuses to maintain a play. But at the same time, Josh Allen was unable to take advantage of it because he just produces too many negatively graded throws.
It was an example of all those things. Deshaun Watson held onto the ball for an average of 3.7 seconds, which is long even for Deshaun Watson. It was the longest of this entire season.
Yep, and he had gotten better at it. He gotten better early in the season, and then
kind of waned. And then there was also when we talked about the DeAndre Hopkins, Tre'Davious White thing on Thursday, we talk a lot about how defense versus offense, like which one is more predictive, right? And I actually thought both of these games on Saturday were great examples of why offense is more predictive of future outcomes than defense. Tre'Davious White is a great corner. DeAndre Hopkins is a great receiver. The great receiver is going to win that matchup, and he did. And he won it on the 40-yarder that ended up setting up the go-ahead touchdown. And then I believe, unless Tre'Davious White has given up a 2-point conversion I'm unaware of, he was the first receiver to catch a pass in the end zone against Tre'Davious White this entire season on the 2-point conversion that ended up allowing the game to go to overtime. So it was a great example of that. And without Will Fuller in this game, it was basically DeAndre Hopkins or bust, because apparently the Texans did not want to send another wide receiver down the field ever, which I don't totally understand. And it seemed like in the first half they were trying to do things to get Hopkins away from White. And then the second half they go, look, okay, we don't have Will Fuller, but we're just going to line up the way that we normally play this thing, and we're going to try and beat them because we're the better team. And ultimately it was enough to get them over it. We're going to talk about, obviously, Houston, Kansas City. And I would venture to say that Deshaun Watson, as good as he played in this game, if he plays this way against Kansas City, it might be a
blowout. And that was the thing. Like Booger talked about so much how impressive Josh Allen was, how poised he was. But people I think just underrate. If you can't score touchdowns, who cares? Like, you have to be able to move the ball, you have to be able to sustain drives, and you have to be able to score. And they scored a touchdown on their first drive on a fluky trick play and did not score another touchdown the rest of the game. And it still took Houston to overtime. We talked about this. When we were talking about this on the podcast the other day, our hesitation was that this was going to be one of those Deshaun Watson sort of games where he just does not play well.
Yeah.
And he, for whatever reason, takes too many sacks. And I think in our chat, I said, this is one of the Watson games. Hopefully he pulls it out like he did against Oakland, where he just played like crap the whole time, but he makes a couple plays down the stretch that say, okay, this guy's special. But turning the clock forward, do you think Watson, because I feel that Watson is no longer Watson is a horrible player to bet against, but he's also kind of a horrible player to bet for, because I just don't see him as somebody who's super predictable. If you held a Bills plus 2.5 ticket or money line ticket, that must have sucked, right?
You're not beating good NFL teams taking that many sacks.
Exactly.
Just period. There's no way. We saw it with the Ravens, right? He took a ton of sacks in that game. It was a disaster. He held on to the ball for way too long, and they got blown out of the building, because when an offense can score, the Bills could not. But when an offense can score, those field goals become touchdowns, and it's 28-0 instead of 13-0. And all of a sudden, that game is totally over. And it took, Josh Allen. It's really interesting. Kev Cole wrote that article on the Bills' offense and what they've done to make him more efficient. And what they did is they said, actually, he's got a strong arm, but he's not accurate down the field, which is what everyone said going, into the draft. And in this game, he was 0 for 6 throwing 20-plus yards downfield. Where he is accurate is on shorter throws. The issue there is that he's still not that accurate.
Yeah, he's not. He's better than himself there, but he's not better than average.
Right. And so the tough thing is you're trying to sustain these drives with these short throws, and it's just not going to happen that often. They also don't have a ton of wide receivers out there. I think the last point that I would make here is J.J. Watt playing in this game, defense doesn't matter. We talk about this a lot. The fact that he came out and played and did not get injured quickly ultimately did matter, because it would have, I don't know if there was any way that building would have come back from J.J. Watt getting injured in the first half and being down 13-0. And then, of course, made that big sack that, hey, I mean, he wasn't blocked on the play, but that got the fan base fired up because it was J.J. Watt. So to the extent that defense matters and the defensive players matter, it did matter that he came back and played in this game. I don't know if it'll matter going forward, but it was a huge win.
I mean, the thing about football that's hard to capture when you do statistics on football are the sort of I don't know, the the outlier players, right? So like when Houston goes, Houston's like one of the worst defenses in the NFL, and you get a player back that can transcend the game. Like it's difficult for like regressions and machine learning models to be like, okay, that's worth X, right? And so we're always going to say, well, that doesn't matter that much. And I think over the course of a huge sample, we're pretty much right. But in a game like that, he can make a play or two that turns the tide of the game around. If I had to sort of go back and be like, okay, would we have made this such a strong pick before the weekend? My answer probably would have been no. But you know, just we got lucky, I think, at the end of the day, the way things worked out.
It was also interesting. A couple of other notes that I had down here, which were Bill O'Brien, LOL.
Yeah.
Because like if they lose that game, Bill O'Brien is getting dumped on.
Interestingly, the only team that made solid decisions this weekend, or that we expected to, actually, I guess, at the end of the day, Philadelphia actually went for 2 4th downs where kicking a field goal would have been the right choice. And everybody else, and even Buffalo went for that 4th and 24 where either kicking a long field goal or punting would have been a better decision for them. You know, it was sort of this weekend where it was marred by really bad decisions, you know, headed by that Saturday night game, which Tennessee going in and it's sort of ending the season of New England.
And the other note I had was Laramie Tunsil. Thank God they got him.
Right. And somebody discussed this on Twitter the other, I was like, how many really perfect pass blocking snaps does Tunsil need to gain that credit back? And I look at the WAR model that we made and say, like, why are offensive and defensive linemen so lowly graded or so lowly, valued? And it's because of that. I mean, when you get a false start or hold, you are basically responsible for that 100%. And those are worth like full points.
Right.
Whereas like
a good play, you are worth a very small part of.
Yeah. And you have to accumulate really good offense, and you have to be a part of that offense for the majority of the time to even accumulate that back. So that's, a really, interesting thing to, and replacement level is tough to do because good tackles false start, bad tackles false start. So they all have this like negative to them.
Great tackles like Ryan Ramczyk get eaten.
Yeah.
Yeah. The big takeaways for both these teams, we'll talk about Houston in a second, but for me, for Buffalo, it's holy cow, regression might be coming. Because I could see this being next year when we look at totals for team wins, where they get a Bearsian type number.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, they had a lot of defensive success. We'd expect that to regress. The quarterback play, it tells you that
they were very healthy defensively.
True.
Their entire their starting 4 members of their secondary, none of them missed a game due to injury this year.
So I am excited to see that number.
Yeah.
Any other notes on that game? I think.
No. I'm interested to see what you think about Houston going into Kansas City.
Yeah,
next week.
We're going to talk about that game soon. Tennessee, New England. We talked about this a little bit, but this game to me was a perfect example of why offense is more predictive than defense, and here's why. The Tennessee Titans defense is trash. They couldn't get pressure at all. Tom Brady was in a clean pocket more often than he has been all season. 86% of his dropbacks, he was kept clean. 86%. That's ridiculous.
Unbelievable.
And the New England Patriots averaged negative expected points added per pass play. So you have this great quarterback. You've given him clean pockets, and you are negative. You are getting further away from scoring every time he drops back to pass, which tells me that those wide receivers are absolutely garbage.
I think there's something to do with Brady too. I mean, he was, a top 12 graded quarterback by us.
He didn't take a sack.
I don't think but he didn't grade well the other night, and it's one of those things where this is the entanglement problem that's really hard to solve. Mohamed Sanu is under a yard per route run since he was acquired. N'Keal Harry was under a yard per route run since he joined the team. No team had less effective tight ends than the Patriots. The Patriots' offensive line wasn't particularly good, but they did okay the other night. But when your only receivers are James White and Julian Edelman, it's going to be really hard.
Yeah, but bad offense can turn a bad defense into a good defense on any given night, just like a good offense can turn a good defense into a bad defense on any given night. And this was an example of that. And then on the other side of things, you had, the Patriots defense is fine, but Ryan Tannehill, who comes in and is, hot like lava, is still able to make plays. they took out A.J. Brown, right? But he still made a couple of big plays, was enough to win the game. So I don't know. I don't think Tannehill played well by any stretch of the imagination. But
well, this was exactly what we said on Thursday. The Patriots are going to take away what the Titans do best, and that was play action passes, and that was passes deep to A.J. Brown. And if the Patriots can score, they will win the game and probably cover. And they were up by 6 going into the last drive of the second quarter. They gave up a touchdown, but none of us were all that worried. But then, they just didn't score in the second half. And neither really did the Titans. Nope. The Titans scored. The only score the Titans had in the second half was that interception return by Logan Ryan at the very end.
To that point.
And so, to me, again, it's just another one where offense is king. Quarterback is mostly king, but if you try to stretch the supporting cast and you don't have brilliance at the quarter, and I don't think Brady's brilliant at the quarterback position anymore. So you don't have brilliance at the quarterback position, your offense is going to struggle.
Do you think that it was worth picking Sony Michel in the first round so that he could get stuffed multiple times at the goal line?
I mean, yeah, and even then he averaged 4.4 yards a carry. It just was the wrong sort of, he had 25 yards on one carry, and then the rest of the game he was garbage. And yeah, man.
This is crazy. So that, running is not very efficient. It's not nearly as efficient as passing. The Tennessee Titans were still more efficient passing than running, despite Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry was great, but still passing is just that much more efficient. But the Titans were more efficient per play running than the Patriots were passing. And that, my friends, is how you lose at home, despite the fog rolling in.
Yeah, you did say the fog would roll in.
I told you this would happen.
God wanted them to win, and they just couldn't. Sometimes you can't turn the hand of fate.
We've talked about both these teams. We'll talk about Tennessee in a bit, but we've talked about the Patriots a lot. Anything else that you want to say about the Patriots?
No. We have to...
got to move on.
Yeah, we have to move on.
Minnesota and New Orleans. Apparently, you just
I have to
Vikings.
I have to apologize. I mean, and granted, like every single other Vikings fan after the Bears game, the first Bears game, Cousins was trash. I think I even had a tweet that said, all of you took your L after 1 year. Hopefully, Cousins can salvage some success in Minnesota and all that kind of stuff. And even though he had a great month and he was basically average other than that month, he played very well today, I thought. He did a great job.
A couple of great throws.
And that's always Kirk Cousins, though. When he knows where he's going with the football, he can be pretty damn good. And he was 2 for 5, 77 yards throwing the ball, over 20 yards downfield, including that pass to Thielen, which was terrific. He had another one to Thielen on like a third down where he was getting hammered and despite that, so even all that, Cousins is 4 of 8 with a touchdown, under pressure, including the game winner. Even despite that, they were lucky to win that game, right? Because Dalvin Cook's fumble-ish thing could have been returned for a touchdown. Taysom Hill sprints for 30, 40 yards on the sideline, then Brees fumbles without getting hit. Obviously there was the clock mismanagement by Sean Payton down the stretch there.
It was bad.
I thought that this, I'm happy the Vikings won, and I'm really excited to see what they do in San Francisco. It'll be their first playoff game against the Niners since 1997. But I think that the Saints, for the third consecutive year, lost the playoff game more than they won.
Well,
more than their opponent beat them.
We talked about this. So the reason that initially on Monday morning, I thought this should have been a 5.5 point spread.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that it was too many points. And the reason that I thought that was that the Vikings, if healthy, and we wrote this in the article previewing the playoffs, how do they win this game? Well, Adam Thielen is actually Adam Thielen.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then the Vikings are the more explosive offense than the Saints are.
Yep.
So they can hit those big plays. And that was exactly what we saw in this game, right? Drew Brees was not...
Stephon Diggs was a non-factor.
But they had the other guy.
And
so that allowed them to go down the field and make some throws. And the writing was on the wall for the Saints a little bit. Drew Brees had not graded well in the past 2 games, despite them having these big offensive performances against really crappy teams. And what we didn't expect, and the reason I sort of came over to maybe the Saints just roll, is the O-line, D-line matchup, which you expected the Saints to win handily. And actually, it was Everson Griffin and Danielle Hunter who just roasted multiple Saints offensive line.
Well, I want to wax poetic here about Zimmer, right? Because Zimmer, there was the rumors about him possibly leaving and going to Dallas.
Those are still out there, by the way. Good call by you.
There was this question about, okay, what are they going to be able to do? Mackenzie Alexander was out. Mike Hughes is out, right? They're still probably going to be out next week. You lost Sheldon Richardson in the offseason. You struggled to get interior pressure all season with the Shamar Steffens, the Jaleel Johnsons, the Linval Joseph, at the later end of his career of the world. And what did they do? They put Ifeanyi Adegbo on the outside as a defensive end. They put Stephen Weatherly on the outside as a defensive end, and they rushed Hunter and Griffin on the inside. And that was something that we hadn't seen all season. It really did, like we talk about coverage versus pass rush, but the interior pass rush there really did mess with Brees. And the fact is he's a shorter guy, so the interior pressure does mess with him, I think, a little bit more than others. And they did just enough in coverage. They sucked in coverage today. I mean, Xavier Rhodes got roasted, and Andrew Sendejo
got sent sprinting.
Andrew Sendejo should never be covering a real NFL receiver in the slot. They have two great safeties in those two, and Harrison Smith got burned by Taysom Hill on that touchdown. But Zimmer changed it up enough, I think, to play. It was probably one of the better games that he's coached in his Vikings career. I would say that.
I think the credit there is very well deserved. I mean, Andres Pete got absolutely wrecked by Everson Griffin there early in the game.
Yep.
And that was something that was obviously strategic. But Ramczyk, who has been a great right tackle, also he gave up 2 sacks in this game. Yeah, which he had. I don't think he'd given up a sack all season. Gave up 2 in this game, and that is, as you said, in these one-off situations, coaching, particularly on the defensive side, is like that 12th man, right?
Yep.
And I think you can make the legit argument that the defensive coordinator is maybe the most valuable defensive player because it is the scheme more so than individually great players that really matters. Because if you come out with a bad game plan, you're going to get torched. And they came out knowing, like Sam Monson messaged me this at some point. He's like, I don't understand how the Saints aren't winning by 30 right now. Because they don't have anyone that's covering the slot. I just don't get it.
Well, and the problem is I think sometimes, so when you're an offense, and you I think made a good point about this last week at this time, the Saints are not an explosive offense. They're efficient, but the issue is in the playoffs, you can't count on just efficiency because if you're the Saints and you want to beat a team like the Vikings who have a pretty good defense and a pretty good offense, you have to score enough points. And the problem is if you want to get 5 yards at a time, you're crossing the street a lot. And eventually you're going to get hit by a car just by chance. And that's kind of the issue with them. They just don't have the deep, players on the field. And the Minnesota Vikings, to their credit, were terrific in that 10 to 19 yard range, right? The Michael Thomas range. So that forced Brees to go over the top, which resulted in an interception at one point. It forced them to go underneath. And I don't know, we're going to kind of dunk on some people here, but Kamara is not a generational player. He's just another running back that was put in a good situation. And today showed all that as well. So, Brees has only completed 3 passes between 10 and 19 yards in the air, and he only attempted, I believe it was, it was only 4 passes in that area. The Vikings took that area away, and that's where you can go. And when they face the 49ers this week, that's the money zone, right? And if they can figure out how to stop that against the Niners, they will be in business. To me, I think the Niners are better equipped to attack that zone against the Vikings, but the Saints were not.
Yeah, I mean, the Niners actually go downfield and are super good at it.
When they do, yes.
Right. They don't need to do it a lot.
And their players, I think, make more plays after the catch.
They have better wide receivers.
Thomas is a very good route runner, gets open. He's decent after the catch. Kamara, like I said, has looked kind of like a sled dog this year. And then after that, who you throw? I mean, Jared Cook has made some plays.
Jared Cook's fine.
Yeah.
They're in for it.
But their second wide receiver, they need a second wide receiver in the draft, frankly.
Drew Brees, 6.7 yards per attempt from a clean pocket. He had 100 yards from a clean pocket, which is un-Drew Brees-like. So my big takeaway from this game, honestly, for the Saints was Saints were better with Taysom Hill at quarterback.
Jeez. I mean,
They were in this game. They needed every bit of that trickeration.
So I'm writing an article about what each one-and-done team has to do to get better in the offseason. And for me, for the Saints, it's got to be you have to figure out if you can continue to win with this in the playoffs in high-leverage situations. You have to find out if you can win with this type of offense because until like I don't think it's a receiver's problem. I don't think it's I think it is like it's not a speed problem. To me, it's what Drew Brees prefers. And unfortunately, this stuff can get you to 13-3. And I hate to sound like, but it can't win in the playoffs. It's hard to win in the playoffs with that kind of offense.
It's not that it can't win in the playoffs. It's just that you force yourself to play perfectly.
Yeah.
You can't get these big plays that can make up for all these errors. Adam Thielen had a horrible fumble in this game.
He had a horrible game in the first half.
Right. It was terrible. You know how you make up for that? You go 40 yards down the right side of the field. Like, those are the situations that can make up for all these things. And if you want to make up for a brilliant game plan by the Minnesota Vikings, you have to be able to go down the field and make some plays down the field. And they couldn't do that. This was the first time where I thought Taysom Hill being in the game was like an absolute game changer for them.
He always annoyed me, but yeah, today he was quite good, and yeah,
it was cool to see. I was looking forward to Saints Packers, but now I'm very much looking forward to Seahawks Packers.
I'm a little sad that there's not a rematch right away between the 49ers and the Seahawks.
The good news is it could still happen.
Yeah.
So the Seahawks, we'll talk about this game very briefly because
sucked.
It was terrible, and it was really sad to see Carson Wentz go out. I mean, that just sucks because that team has had so many injuries all season. And the one that they could not afford, obviously, was Carson Wentz. And you put the team on his back, so to speak. They certainly would have had a chance to win this game because they had a chance to win this game with Josh freaking McCown out there wearing old, retro Jordan 1 sneakers. Right. And they still had a chance to win this game. And ultimately, this game was all about what we just talked about, which is Russell Wilson makes plays down the field. He throws the best deep ball in the NFL. And when DK Metcalf can actually catch, because he had 3 drops the last time they played Philadelphia, they were super dangerous. And so it was those plays down the field that ultimately won the game.
And at the same time, every Seahawks game, I watch it and I think to myself, how the heck did X happen?
Right.
And last week it was, I watched their offense try to operate and I come up for air and I'm like, how the heck did they almost win this game? And then today I watched their offense operate. I come up and I'm like, how the heck did they only score 17 points?
Yep. Well, I'll tell you how. Russell Wilson went, 4 for 7 on throws 20-plus yards downfield. Josh McCown did not attempt a throw 20-plus yards downfield. That is how the game was won. Now, the way that they only scored that many points is that, let's see here. They ran the ball.
Right.
So they threw the ball 65% of the time. And when they threw the ball, they were successful on 46% of their plays for an average of 0.63 expected points added per pass, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
It was the best, I believe, of the entire wild card.
He averaged more than 10 yards per pass from a clean and a broke pocket.
Okay, it was amazing. But when they ran the ball, they averaged negative 0.6 expected points
That's what you call balance.
Per run. So each run was basically subtracting as much as each pass was adding. 10% of their runs improved their expected points. In other words, got them closer to scoring on the next scoring play. That is how you have a generational quarterback who is making plays down the field, was the most efficient thrower of the football every time he dropped back to throw in the wild card round, and yet only put up 17 points.
You hate
it's
this.
Incredible.
It's unbelievable. So I think we're all in agreement that next week's game between the Packers and the Seahawks is just going to be one big tilt fest on Twitter.
It's going to be. It's absolutely going to be. It's going to be people annoyed with Aaron Rodgers. It's going to be people annoyed with the Seahawks running. There's going to be some DK Metcalf shirtless stuff. It should be awesome. I'm excited to talk about that one. So should we talk about the games?
Yeah, let's talk about the games.
Let's do it. Okay, so the early Saturday game. Now, I guessed the lines. You, I don't think did. Is that?
Yeah,
you cheated on me.
The cat was out of the bag by the time I looked.
Okay, so we'll start with the first game on Saturday, which is Vikings Niners. Mm-hmm. This is the NBC game. It is our last game of the season. It's early on Saturday, which I love.
Yeah,
it means I can enjoy the rest of the games. And I thought that the Niners would be 5.5-point favorites over the Minnesota Vikings.
You're not too far off.
I'm guessing I'm still short, though.
Yes. San Francisco is -6.5. Okay. The total on the game is 45.5.
And I think this is giving a lot of credit to Mike Zimmer, right? This is saying, look, Mike Zimmer shut down an offense that everyone thought was very, very good in the New Orleans Saints, and now an offense that is very, very good in the San Francisco 49ers, he should be able to handle as well. Now, just because I guessed short does not mean that I'm excited to take the Vikings. However, at 6.5, if I had to take one side of this game, I'm not sure it wouldn't be the Vikings.
Yeah, I mean, San Francisco, we've made some money backing their opponent at 6.5 during the course of the regular season.
The Seahawks are one of them.
Yep. And, the Rams were one just a couple weeks ago. Here's my hesitation, so San Francisco is off a bye week.
Yep.
This is the early game on Saturday. So not only do you get San Francisco off of a bye, you get Minnesota flying basically from Central Time Zone to Pacific Time Zone and playing the early game.
They have the least rest of any team in this round.
That's right. And so that's my difficulty in backing Minnesota here. It's also my difficulty in backing the over. Last week, every single guess that we had the line moved with our guess on the total.
No, people were watching and moved
and bet it. Yeah. Yep. So that would be my only concern. When I initially saw it, though, I think it's trying to entice the two-way action. I think there's a lot of people. Minnesota has been a team that folks have wanted to make money off of for a while. They have a good defense. They have a good coach. Their quarterback is talented. They have two good receivers. There's a lot to like about that team. San Francisco, on the other hand, has been a very similar group where yards per play, offense and defense, all that kind of stuff has been. So this, to me, I think you're going to get two-way action. I think it stays at 6.5 the whole week.
Enticing two-way action. Pretty exciting.
Don't talk about Jerry Jones like that, okay?
What's the total at?
45.5.
Okay. The reason that I would be hesitant about the Minnesota Vikings is exactly the reason that I was sort of bullish on the Minnesota Vikings last week, which is that the Niners can hit big plays and will hit big plays. And that is what Kyle Shanahan wants to do, both in the run game but in the pass game. They have the lowest average depth of target in the league, so it's deceiving. But when they throw deep, they average the most yards per deep pass attempt in the entire league. And when they throw short, it's still with the aim of gaining big plays. Yep. They have the most yards after catch in the NFL, which is how they're a top 7 offense, basically, despite Jimmy G being about 15th in terms of offensive, PFF grade, and that speaks to the scheme, right? They have Deebo Samuel and George Kittle, who are probably the two best receivers after the catch that you could possibly want. I mean, AJ Brown was great, and then you have Emmanuel Sanders, who is an actual wide receiver one, which they have not had in forever, and then Raheem the Dream Mostert on the outside.
The Vikings gave up a little bit to Jared Cook today, but ultimately have been one of the best teams in terms of stopping tight ends,
which we discussed.
So for me, if I look at this game, the people that can kill the Vikings in this game are the backside of the backfield, the wide receivers, and then I think Kittle is somewhat neutralized. Not like 0 catches, but like 5 for 75. Like, is that would you take the over or the under on that line?
I'm going to take the over.
Okay.
Here's why I would take the over, is that the Niners defense was great to start the season because they played crappy offenses.
Yep.
But I think we're finding out that they're actually pretty average, right? And the Minnesota offense with 2 healthy receivers, and I can tell you right now that Stephon Diggs will be more involved in this passing attack than he was this week. They can hit explosive plays. The Niners, totally fresh, will hit explosive plays, and they will take advantage of those cornerbacks in a way that the Saints simply did not. So I always root for points.
It looks like Kwan Alexander is possible to play in this game. D4, Jaquiski Tart also.
They're going to be healthy.
the thing with the Saints today. What did the Saints do? Because I thought the Vikings Cousins played well, but they didn't only score 26 points, right? So what did the Saints do? Well, Demario Davis had a terrific game. He was awesome on both sides of the line of scrimmage. The Saints had one really disruptor on the defensive line. They were without Davenport and Rankins. The Minnesota Vikings offensive line is hot garbage if they let it, right? If they force it to do too many things. So for me, I'm looking at this game. I think I'm going to lay the points with San Francisco and also take the under.
Okay. I probably won't be taking the under, but if I had to take one side right now, it's the Niners minus 6.5. If it was 7, I'd be a little worried.
Yep.
But I just think this is a mountain that is probably too high to climb for the Minnesota Vikings, a fully rested team that is just the Niners are way more talented than the New Orleans Saints are.
If you had to take a side on the total, what would you take?
I think the over, because I could see San Francisco just running up and down the field on them.
Okay.
This is how it ends for me.
Right.
You can already see me crying in a pile of freshly pressed board shorts that I had laid out ready to go to Miami.
And the team that I liked as a child coming in and
squirting all the sunscreen out of the tube.
So there's an interesting one. I don't know if you saw my tweet. In 1987, the Vikings went into New Orleans and won a playoff game. They were 8-7. It was a strike shortened year, only 15 games. Then they went into San Francisco. It was the first time in the career of Joe Montana he was benched for ineffective play. They won there. And then on my second birthday, they lost to the Washington Redskins in the NFC title game.
Wow.
So
you're seeing a repeat?
So I don't know.
Here's the difference. You want to know the difference?
There's no Washington Redskins.
No. The difference is that I was not born when that happened. Right. And now I'm here.
And then they played a playoff game in 97. The last time the 49ers were the 1 seed in the NFC, I believe, was in 1997. The Vikings, as a 6 seed, went into New York, won a playoff game, came and got drilled. So that might
Anytime you came and got drilled at the same time, it's a good night.
You love to see it. The reason I like the under in this game is if you look at Santa Clara's weather.
You're on fire today.
A week.
You've got 2-way action. You came and got drilled.
14-mile-per-hour winds.
This is an early podcast.
40% chance of rain.
This is in San Francisco?
No, Santa Clara.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's why I was so confused by the wind. Because Santa Clara
is windy.
Well, but not relative to San Francisco.
Right.
If anyone is not familiar with the Bay Area, San Francisco, I grew up equidistant between Santa Clara and San Francisco. And I was still about 40 minutes away from both of them. So Santa Clara is a solid 2-hour trip away with traffic included from San Francisco. It's nowhere near it. San Francisco is windy as hell. And Candlestick got a ton of wind. And it's, nothing's colder than a summer in San Francisco, obviously. Santa Clara is just like totally different. But still, you will get some wind there.
When you first found out why the stadium is called Candlestick, was your mind blown?
Yes. You were the one that told me about it.
It was crazy.
Okay. So we're both taking the Niners.
Yeah.
By the way, if it doesn't go the Niners' way, you already heard me tell you why it is, and that's a Jimmy G collapse and the Tom Brady rumors show up. You're welcome. The next game is the night game. I believe it'll be Nance and Romo because so it's prime time. It's Ravens Titans. You would figure there'd be Nance and Romo.
And so NBC gets the Minnesota San Fran, so there's only one Fox game, right?
Right.
So I think Nance Romo would go to Tennessee Baltimore because it's a night game.
It's a prime
And then
time
the
game.
secondary, who would that be? Ian Eagle and no.
Maybe, but I think Harlan's
better, yeah.
It should be Harlan. But Houston, Kansas City is the better matchup. Tennessee, Baltimore is probably a double-digit spread, and we'll get to that right now. I guessed that if it was Tennessee, Baltimore, it would be Baltimore minus 12, and it is not. I'm a little long.
It was 9.5 when it opened, and it is now 10.
Now 10.
I think I got some at 9.5. Look here. The Ravens are not about any of this nonsense that the Titans like. I hate to sound like
I'm laying 10 and I'm laying 11.
I hate to sound so cocksure of myself, but looky here. The Titans can't get pressure.
They have a terrible defense.
They can't cover. They hit pretty well the other night, but you think the Ravens are just not going to. And then on defense, they blitz so much. Sacks. And then their coverage is good enough on the back end. If you didn't read the article, go to pff.com, read the article. But Baltimore rushes the most rushers in the league and still forces opponents to hold onto the ball, basically middle of the pack in the NFL, which means they're bringing players and then the quarterback has to hold on to it longer because the coverage is good.
Which when you blitz, the quarterback has a shorter time to throw.
Should just get rid of it. But if you can stop the quarterback's first read, that's golden, right? And that just plays so much into Tannehill. I mean, you said 6 sacks. I think it's like 10 sacks. I think
that was the thing about
they sacked Mariota last year when they won 21-0. It was like 12 times, right?
It was a joke.
Yeah. But
one of the reasons we talked about the Patriots having a chance to cover, and ultimately they did have a chance to cover. Unfortunately, Sony PlayStation went out of business. The thing with Ryan Tannehill is that when he gets the throw off, it's been pretty good. But he's taking a sack on nearly 10% of his dropbacks.
Taking a sack.
Which is the highest rate in the league.
Yeah.
And so against a team like the Ravens, who are going to be ready to rock, that place is going to be I wish I could go to that game because it is going to be bumping.
There's nothing fundamental about the Titans on defense that's going to perturb it.
Can I say this? Remember when the Ravens went out and just their offense torched the Miami Dolphins like it was like they were playing against air?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it'll be that, but I could see 45 plus from the Ravens.
The last time these two teams played, Mariota was 10 of 15 for 117 yards.
Sack 13?
Let me look.
Did he have more sacks and attempts? It was
so 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Damn. 11 sacks.
And here's the thing. Tennessee is going to come out, and they're going to be aware of this, and they're going to pound Derrick Henry into the ground.
They had 51 total yards of passing, 55 rushing yards.
So bad. They're going to pound Derrick Henry into the ground because they think that's what won them the New England game. And it didn't, as we talked about already. Their passing game, even though it was bad in this game, was still more efficient per drop back than they were per run with Derrick Henry.
Yep.
And so they're going to come out and they're going to do this. And what happens when you do that against Baltimore? Baltimore is the best team in the first 15 plays of the game. Baltimore will be up 14-0, and then all of a sudden you're trying to run play action. Baltimore ain't buying it at all because they know you're in an obvious passing situation. They're blitzing. Tannehill's turning his back to the offense, and then ultimately his back is in the ground, and we are on to whoever's next.
Yeah, because it's just I know that they have to lay this number out here. We saw our friend Josh Hermsmeyer, the 538 numbers minus 13. I would imagine our number's similar. Here's the reason why I think that our model will be on on Baltimore. Tannehill's 2-year numbers
not great.
Are basically average. You take last year is really bad, this year is really good. Mm-hmm. Whereas the Ravens are like basically good across the board. To me, I think like that's the only way you got to do it. And then I think just correlated with that is I think the over is a big, because
what's the total at right now?
48.
Yes.
So because to me,
especially because if Baltimore gets out to a lead and then Tennessee can abandon the Derrick Henry poop log machine.
Yeah. My only concern is that like literally,
what else does his
it looks like a log.
Looks like a giant log,
yeah.
Right? That or like a booger drawing.
Yeah, but you got to put 2 balls on the back of his head if you want to.
Those are. Have you seen Derrick? I don't want to pile on Derrick Henry.
Yeah,
I like Derrick Henry.
He's a great back.
Dude is a beast.
We had him as in PFF Fantasy, our projections this year, a top 5 back, and people hated that. But
I would say
the efficiency and the volume.
If I'm looking at like athletes in the NFL that I am most jealous of. Here are my top
DN that gets that kind of volume in the run game.
Here are my top 5 athletes in the NFL. Are you ready for this?
Okay.
Aaron Donald, Myles Garrett.
Okay.
Dude is savage.
He's also mentally stable from what it looks like.
Yeah, but guy's insane. I guess I'll put DK Metcalf in there because
Randy Bullock.
Even those 3 going ain't great. I think I would be tempted to put Derrick Henry in there.
And he looks like a defensive end.
I mean, he's insane. And then my 5th, and this is a list I'm making up on the fly, so if I've forgotten someone, please don't kill me. But I think it's a tie between Barkley and Christian McCaffrey. Both those dudes are insane.
I'm a huge fan of Lamar.
Oh.
Because my thing with Lamar...
Yeah, Lamar's great.
I used to play...
But it's not... He's got more... his athleticism is more like innate shiftiness compared to just...
It's even different than that. when I was in college, I had a friend named Jamal O'Neal who played on the basketball team. He was my height but skinny, and he said, "Look, I'm not that big, but I'm crazy." I think Lamar would knock a motherfucker out if you mess with him, right?
He's not that big, but he's crazy.
In addition to being fast, have you seen how he acts when he throws an incompletion?
That's true.
That dude's nuts, and in a good way.
Jackson.
In a good way.
I love Lamar Jackson. I'm really bummed that Russell Wilson had such a good year for such a crappy team, right? And that, like, because I want to go, I'm all in on Lamar Jackson. I think he's awesome.
Yeah.
I think what he does for his team is awesome. So this should be a fun game. If it goes wrong for the Ravens,
it goes under the total, I think.
I think it goes under the total. And I was also going to say, if it goes wrong for the Ravens, I would not be surprised if it was because of a couple of Lamar fumbles, which we haven't seen this year.
Or an injury. Like, it could be, like, honestly, like,
wide receiver one,
but
Mark Andrews.
Here's the thing. Like, their second string blew the doors off of a Steelers team that had everything to play for.
Sure.
It was unreal.
Yeah, blew the doors off the second string of the Steelers. All right, the early game on Sunday is Houston, Kansas City. I thought that Kansas City would be a 7.5-point favorite against Houston.
It's 9.5.
Okay.
It was 9. Total on this game 49. I think that's been basically where it's been since the open. So some support for Kansas City. I did see it go down to 8.5 and then back up to 9.5, which I agree with this movement. The hard part is Kansas City.
9.5 is a lot.
It is a lot. And Kansas City, and when these two teams faced off in October, I believe Kansas City was 6.5-point favorites, but they were missing Eric Fisher, they were missing Chris Jones, they were missing Frank Clark.
Here was the bigger
Tyreek Hill. Well, no, Tyreek Hill was playing, but there was a couple other injuries.
The biggest injury was Pat Mahomes.
Yeah.
So the week before, we had Indy, KC, and Pat Mahomes hurts his ankle, and by all accounts, the ankle injury was the worst injury of the two that he had, right? Everyone remembers the dislocated kneecap, which knocked him out of the Denver game when Matt Moore came in and won.
Right.
But the ankle injury was a severe ankle injury, and he was going to try and play through it.
Yep.
And he tried in that Houston game, and it was not good. So that was a facetious Houston win. And I was kind of hoping, to be perfectly honest, people would have forgotten that and go, oh, Houston beat them already. Maybe we should let 6.5 or something like that.
Right.
And ultimately they did not. 9.5 though. Like, do you really think Deshaun Watson is going to go in there and just get blown out?
Well, we have experience of that happening, right? Like, so he went in, and granted, there is a significant chance that Baltimore is better than any other team in the NFL by a wide margin. Like, most people are a little bit heavier on them in the futures market than we are, blah, blah, blah. But Houston went into Baltimore. That game was basically scoreless through one quarter, and then Baltimore just ran the train on them, and it was over.
Counterpoint, though, there was a blown PI call that would have set them up at the 1.
It's true.
Would have kept that a close game.
But you look at the Kansas City versus Houston game last time, it was really, sold by the fact that Kansas City got behind the 8 ball at the very end of the half. Juan Thornhill got an interception.
They got screwed, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Juan Thornhill got an interception. Mahomes got, sack, fumble, touchdown at the very end. Like, I don't know. From the point spread perspective, it's tough, right? But I would lay the points with Kansas City, but I'm not, like, super pumped about it. From a winning the game and moving on perspective, I'm all in on the Chiefs just because, Andy Reid off of a bye. Andy Reid, Bill O'Brien. Like, we give Andy Reid crap because in the 2-minute he struggles, but on the play-to-play stuff, he's going to run circles around Romeo Crennel. He's going to run circles around Bill O'Brien, right, in terms of like the how to finagle things. The only thing that worries me a little bit, and why I think the over is a good play in this game, is Will Fuller playing.
Yes, I was about to say that. If Will Fuller comes back and is actually healthy, it's tough for me to see this being a blowout. I would say, though, if it gets down to 8.5, and then you've also got the Niners at 6.5.
You could tease.
A little teaser action.
Here's the question that I'm going to ask you about, and because I'm writing this article right now, I want your opinion. Kansas City's defense improved substantially this year. Especially over the last half of the season, they're basically a top 10 defense in EPA allowed per play, per pass play, all that kind of stuff. Against first reads, they're terrific. They have moved into a range where they're a defense you can win with. They are not a defense you can win because of. But unlike last season, when they were a defense you win despite of, they're a defense you can win with. Yes,
agree. They're no longer one of the 5 worst defenses in the NFL.
They're not a team where I'm constantly flinching every time like the other team has the football. But if you're going to cite reason X, Y, and Z why they win this game, or they win the game against Baltimore the following week, or in the Super Bowl against the Niners, you're not citing defense as one of the top 5 reasons, right? I mean, the defense is not a reason they lose, but it's not a reason they win either.
Still thinking about the spread though. Think about it this way. Maybe what this spread is reacting to is the market believing that defense is a stable thing. And that, well, Kansas City, we know their offense is really good, but hey, like they also have a really good defense now. So we've got to make this, a big number because their defense is good. And I would push back on that, and I would say, look, they're missing Juan Thornhill, who was one of their most – he was a player that allowed them to move guys around, put Tyrann Mathieu, right, is now in the slot, has been tremendous there. He's played – Juan Thornhill has been great. They don't
put Kendall Fuller deep.
Back.
Yep.
So I would like to fade the narrative that the Kansas City Chiefs defense is good. I would say that the Kansas City defense is a defense. Yeah. Unlike, say, the Giants defense or the Dolphins defense, which isn't a defense. Yep. It's just a hodgepodge of players out there praying that the balls gets thrown to them. They are a real defense, but that means they're still at the mercy of a good offense. And if Will Fuller is there, that is a good offense. I would also point out that the Buffalo Bills have a legit set of talented players on the defensive end that is probably going to give DeAndre Hopkins, Will Fuller, those offensive players as much trouble as they'll ever see. I don't foresee that happening with Kansas City.
Yeah, absolutely. But to back it up a little bit, Houston does not have a defense.
No, they don't.
And there were some things that they did Saturday night that people, I think, were going to gravitate to and say this is a sign of improvement. Yeah. J.J. Watt got pressure off the edge. He's not going to get that pressure against Mitchell Schwartz. He might get some. Mitchell Schwartz is far better than that.
Well, also Pat Mahomes is far better than
Pat Mahomes is far better than Josh Allen. They're healthy. Like you always give me flack because I sort of am a Sammy Watkins truther to some degree. I think Sammy is a terrific third option, and he was great in the playoffs last year. He's as healthy as he's been all year. Demarcus Robinson, Mecole Hardman, who's an all-pro.
Hardman is awesome.
All-pro as a rookie. Kelsey, Hill, right? Like the Houston doesn't have a chance in this game to cover these players. And then you have, I think if Damian Williams is their running back, I think they're fine, right? In terms of like the screen game and all that kind of stuff. I think Houston is going to be like spinning in circles trying to find these guys. And so the question, if you're trying for the spread, you're looking at the point spread here is, okay, can Kansas City get 3 more stops than Houston? I think the answer is yes.
What's the total at right now?
49.
I think if I had to take one part of this game, I think I would take the over.
Okay.
Because I think this number is inflated a little bit because people view Kansas City's defense as being real, which I want to fade. However, there's a lot of variance with the Houston Texans offense that may make that makes a cover untenable in certain situations, but they may be in a situation where they just got to throw it up and hope and pray. And
so are you taking so if you had to take one, would you take Kansas City or would you take Houston?
I would take Kansas City.
Okay. Just putting this down. You did better than me last week.
It's real tough though because I love Deshaun Watson.
I do too, but
it's 9.5.
I have the receipts of both of us turning coat on him in the middle of the game, and basically us being like,
"This game is over." Was slacked 7 times.
But you even you said you're like Watson's. I've done a 180 on Watson. He's done, and then of course, then after that he proves us all wrong. But the one thing that you did say on the podcast, which was great last week, Watson's running. Because he turned that game around with a couple runs that were, and then in the overtime period, he had a couple of those read keeps where he was very efficient, and it was a very good point that you made. Allen, I think, is still the better runner, but Watson's running was equally as important to the team, I thought, than
Allen is a more productive runner because he gets more chances.
Right.
But if you said, hey, you get one run from each of these guys, who do you want? I will take Deshaun Watson.
Well, especially if there's a pass option to it, right?
I will take Deshaun Watson 11 times out of 10.
The pass option
Deshaun Watson is... Lamar Jackson is one with a bullet, right?
Mm-hmm.
The next guy on that list is Deshaun Watson, right?
I think I would say is because
It's Deshaun
you
Watson.
add to that the possibility that he could throw, and it's pretty tough to deal with. Yeah.
I'm now wavering. It's 9.5.
Yeah.
You're taking the Chiefs.
I'm taking Kansas City right now.
Okay, I'll go Houston.
Okay.
I'm sticking with my guy. If Deshaun Watson is Michael Jordan, as as Dabo Sweeney said, right, passing on Deshaun Watson is like passing on Michael Jordan, that would make Bill O'Brien Doug Collins, I believe,
Yeah.
who did not win a championship.
So Sunday at noon Central
MJ.
Time, the weather is going to be about 40 degrees with 11-mile-per-hour winds. Not a real chance for precipitation. You got to think, though, if there's snow, there is no way on God's green earth that Bill O'Brien will have that team prepared.
Yeah, there's no chance. If there's any snow, then I will be backing Patrick Mahomes with everything that I have to my name.
Yep.
All right, the final game of the weekend is
We
the
don't get to
Fox
see
game.
whether or not New Orleans would be favored in Green Bay.
I know. I don't think they would have been.
I think it would have been a pick.
So I would have had, I wrote all of these down. I would have had Green Bay as a 1-point favorite against New Orleans. I would have had them as a 3.5-point favorite against Philadelphia. And I have them as a 2.5-point favorite against Seattle.
That's a little short. The market likes Green Bay, -4. Total on the game, 46. I know, man.
Bring me Russell Wilson.
You have, well,
Give me all of the Russell Wilson.
Here's my question for you, because I want to handicap this right in front of everybody here.
All set.
How much better of a coach is Matt LaFleur than Schottenheimer /
He's not.
Okay. How much better are the receivers for Green Bay than
They're worse.
Seattle? Okay, they're worse. Does defense matter?
No.
Okay, so
And the quarterback. Russell Wilson is
played in Wisconsin for 1 year. He's an NC State grad, but he played in Wisconsin for 1 year.
Russell Wilson has been the best thrower of the football this season. He's the best deep ball thrower of the football that we have seen in the past 6 years. Aaron Rodgers is right now a middle of the pack quarterback.
Yep.
Aaron Rodgers is not even better than Kirk Cousins right now.
I agree.
So
I'm
unless
with you.
unless you are Mike Renner, who thinks that Aaron Rodgers is going to put on Superman's cape and be amazing all of a sudden after being below average from a clean pocket all season, unless you're Mike Renner, who's a Green Bay Packers fan, you live in reality, 4 is too many points.
I agree. And
The Green Bay Packers are the most fraudulent 13-3 team you can possibly construct.
And the other thing, and we've talked about this before when we've looked at teams like the Rams, we've looked at teams like San Francisco against Seattle, who have Green Bay's most explosive players are running backs. Who are Seattle's best defensive players? They're linebackers. So, and safeties. Quandre Diggs came back today, from all accounts, did well. I see this game going under. I see this game being a slugfest. And if you tell me this game's going to go under 46 and it's not going to be decided by a field goal either way, you're crazy. So for me,
46?
yes.
Oh my God. I will be taking Seattle and the under, and I'm sure that's now going to work out really poorly. But let me tell you how this game goes. We're going to come out, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. Aikman is going to tell us that both teams running the ball is going to be what matters, despite the fact that Seattle nearly lost the game.
It was
so bad at running.
Yeah.
And then I love Troy. By the way, his suit today was like St. Patty's Day-esque. It was pretty.
He's ready.
Pretty baller. Joe Buck also gets ripped on mercilessly, despite being one of the
Very
best
good
play-by-play guys
Yes.
out there. And I will say that I've said this before. I'll say this again. The reason that he gets ripped on is because people are so jealous of the fact that he's like a good-looking dude who has an awesome job, and people just hate it.
Well, and
They're just a bunch of
the fact
haters.
that he's good looking after growing up as Buzz from Home Alone
that's
is
true.
also the best. Is a good testament to him.
Okay, but here's how the game goes. So it starts out with Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith roasting the living hell out of the Seahawks offensive line. And the Seahawks.
How many times does Russell turtle in the pocket? Like 3-4 times.
I mean, poor guy. He gets sacked like 4 times in the first quarter. And yet, the Green Bay Packers only managed to score 10 points.
Yep.
So it's 10-3 going into the half. And then they come out, the Packers get the ball, they go 3 and out. And all of a sudden, the Seahawks get more and more plays, and Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith slow down a little bit, and they score a touchdown, and it's 10-10, and Aaron Rodgers throws the ball away on 3rd and 5, and then all of a sudden, DK Metcalf gets deep down the field, Aaron Rodgers hits him, and then it's 17-10, and then the Packers have a couple of drives that just don't work out. They kick a field goal. They've got a chance. They need to score a touchdown. Field goal doesn't help. Aaron Rodgers throws a Hail Mary, and unfortunately, this one isn't caught. And then we have Seahawks Niners rematch. Let's go.
Let's go.
How great would that be?
Seahawks Niners in the NFC Championship game would be great. I also
Look, we've already seen the Packers going to San Francisco. That was an absolute atrocity.
Well, and I would say, so I was actually doing some work this weekend. I had on in the background an old Niners game. And people forget. So the Niners have owned the Packers in recent playoffs. But in the 90s, I think the worst loss in San Francisco 49ers history was when they lost in 95 to the Packers. It started Brett Favre. And I actually watched that game was on YouTube. I was watching it, and it was just like the most demoralizing game if you were a Niners fan. And then, of course, they lost to them in 96. They lost to them in the 97 NFC Championship game. They were the 1 seed and had the home field. So that's like a cool, like underrated rivalry there. Obviously, Seahawks Niners is even better, but also Minnesota Seattle is a underrated rivalry, and then Minnesota Green Bay is that's the border battle or whatever in Minnesota Wisconsin. So any permutation of the NFC is going to be pretty sweet, and I think like the most likely permutation in the AFC is going to be pretty cool. Obviously with Kansas City Baltimore, but even Houston Baltimore would be great. I think the only, the nut low would be Tennessee making the AFC Championship game.
That would be awful. All right, so let's play this out.
Okay.
I think San Francisco gets the W.
Okay.
I think that Seattle pulls the upset. I think we have San Francisco, Seattle on the NFC side, and I think San Francisco and Jimmy G steamroll.
And then you
Seattle.
go KC ball on the other side.
Yep. And I think that is probably the game of the playoffs right there. Mm-hmm. I think that is.
It'll be interesting. What would you make the line?
I would have Baltimore favored by 3. And
yeah.
I will be short there. It will be more than 3.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if Kansas City goes to Baltimore, I think we'll be on Kansas City. If Seattle goes to San Francisco, I think we'll be on Seattle.
I think San Francisco would be a 5.5, 6.5
Yep.
point.
I think it's back to 6.
Yes. And I still think San Francisco wins that game.
Yep.
But I could see us back in Seattle. I believe that Kansas City can beat Baltimore. And partially because I don't want to be everyone, but also because I do believe that as great as Lamar Jackson is, that Pat Mahomes is the better quarterback, and I'll take the better quarterback there.
And I think the defenses are closer than people think and matter less than people think.
Absolutely. And so then I would have Kansas City, San Francisco in Miami.
And then we have to ask Chris for tickets.
What do you think the spread is of that?
Neutral field. I think Kansas City would be laying 2.5.
Wow. See, I don't think that's the case. I think San Francisco, in part because they're such a public team, but also because they were the better team in the regular season. I think they would be like a 1.5, 2 point favorite. If Baltimore makes it, and it's Baltimore, San Francisco, I think Baltimore would be a 3.5 point favorite.
Well, because they were 6 in Baltimore. I don't think enough has changed over that course of time. So I would think it would be 3 there. If Seattle played either Kansas City or Baltimore,
7.5 to 9.5,
yes.
somewhere between there.
And I would take Russ with everything in that situation.
Absolutely.
Because my thing with Wilson is like, every single game is like the one. Like, so if you tease, we told you about the Tennessee teaser, which hit, right? We told you about the New Orleans teaser, which did not. But then the Seattle one, right? With Seattle was, I believe, yeah. So the Philly one would have been, they were at 2, so up to 6 would have 8 would have pushed, right? So like Seattle just plays these games within
2.5.
Yeah, Seattle just plays these games between the 8s, right? And like I think that would be, if you can get Seattle for anything above a touchdown, like that's every single game for them. Like they just don't get blown out, or they don't blow out teams.
Yeah, no, I'm absolutely with you. Would you, if you're just an impartial football fan, would you rather see Baltimore, San Francisco, or Kansas City, San Francisco, or some other iteration? For example, I think Deshaun Watson in the Super Bowl would be really fun.
Here's my thing. San Francisco has not won a Super Bowl since 1995. They are one of the storied franchises in the NFL. They kind of got jobbed out of a Super Bowl in 2012. So in my opinion, they just like for me, from the how compelling the league is, I want San Francisco to be in there, and I would not be upset if they won. The other thing about San Francisco that's not trivial as well is, unlike Baltimore, unlike Kansas City, unlike Seattle, there's a question as to whether San Francisco's quarterback is a perennial Super Bowl quarterback. Mm-hmm. So it was much like, when Arizona got in the Super Bowl like 10 years ago or whatever, I always wanted that team that I don't think is ever going to get back to be. I want them to win when they get there. Tampa Bay back in the day with Brad Johnson, right? Like, not to say I think Jimmy G sucks. It's just like, this is probably San Francisco's best chance for a while, and I hope they capitalize. I think the Ravens, I think the Chiefs, the Seattle, they'll be back for years, I think.
Okay, but I asked you what the best matchup would be.
The best matchup would be San Francisco versus Baltimore.
Okay. We've already seen it. I want to see San Francisco, Kansas City. As a partial observer, I would love that too. But I think the best matchup right now would be Baltimore SF. The point is, it's going to be fun.
It's going to be great.
And I can't wait. And we'll be back with you guys on Thursday. Do we have any confessions? I don't think I have any confessions today.
I don't.
Trying to think what happened. I feel like something happened that I need to talk about, and I can't remember what it is.
Other than I switched locations for the second half of the Houston game, and it won.
This is what I have. I have a story from the Cincy Y.
Oh, no.
I sent you a picture of it.
Oh, that's right.
I was in the gym on Saturday. I put my stuff in a locker. I go work out, come back. I'd actually just gone for a swim. And so there's like these little, like corridors where the lockers are, and you have to walk down yours. There is a dude in a towel laying on the floor, face first, like stomach down on the floor, diagonally, like across the lane. So like you can't, like I had to step over the guy to get down to my locker. So he's just laying there. He like barely moves when I step over him to get to my locker. But no, it gets better. So there's then a guy that walks up whose locker is literally like right in front of this guy. Mm-hmm. So he's like standing, like he doesn't want to step on the dude. He's like unlocking his lock, like trying to make noise. So the guy notices that he's like right there. Dude does not flinch. When I left, he was still laying face first. First off, you could not pay me enough to lay on the floor of the Cincinnati YMCA locker room.
The guy probably has crabs now.
I mean, holy shit. It's disgusting. But the guy didn't move. Now, I don't know. Maybe he had some mental thing. Who knows? I don't want to pass judgment. But if not, what the ever-living shit is wrong with you? That's my story from the Cincy Y. Come on, man. Laying on the floor.
But we know, like, the people there, man, they lay, like, cheeks first on, like, a couch. It's unbelievable.
Anyways.
Right?
That's my story.
Oh, my gosh.
There was not a single human being in my apartment gym on Friday morning when I went in there.
So they lasted till Jan 4?
They lasted
Jan
till
3?
Jan 4. Maybe all of them got the mirror, so they're in their apartment dancing in front of their mirror. You never know.
Can you imagine dancing in front of yourself?
$1,000 well spent for 2 months of exercise. All right. That was our show. This was fun. We were energized. This was great. We'll be back energized as usual. Thursday, we'll be doing remote. I'll be in Las Vegas.
Don't remind me.
So you never know. Maybe I'll be mid-laugh dance at that point. We'll cut that part. We'll see you guys. Peace out.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel. And if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.